Again, thanks for joining today's Telerik Test Studio webinar. We're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. Today's webinar is entitled Educational Institutions Rely on Test Studio. First, I want to thank everybody for joining in today. We're still getting a few more folks trickling in here, but we're going to go ahead and kick things off because there's lots to show you in a short amount of time. First of all, just by way of introduction, my name is Andy Whelan. I'm a Senior Sales Engineer for Telerik Test Studio and also a Certified Scrum Master. I've been working with this product and the company for about 4.5 years at this point. And what we're going to start out with is just a few slides to go through, and then we're going to jump into the application itself because I really want to show you where Test Studio is going to help you. But before I get going here, I want to also, of course, let you know a couple housekeeping items real quick. All the callers are muted throughout the call, but definitely feel free to use the questions or comments panel. If you're having any trouble hearing or seeing things, you should be able to see my screen at this point and hear my voice. We'll also be trying to provide some follow-up or providing follow-up to any questions that we can't answer along the way, but definitely feel free to jump in with any questions that you might have, and we'll try to get those answered. Also, if there's time, we'll try to have a few answers at the end of the session, if not follow up via email with you, to make sure everything gets answered correctly. So where I want to start out with is where a lot of our customers are trying to get to. And being an education institution, you have a lot of tools that you have to rely on, either ERP, line of business type of solutions, or CRMs, or student enrollment, student registration, content-rich websites, e-learning. There's just a multitude of technologies, of course, mobile apps as well. So students have every access point they could get to, the omni-channel kind of methodologies and the Internet of Things that all universities really have to be involved in. And so what I wanted to start with was just what we do at the end result, what a lot of people are looking to get out of test automation. And that is sort of the day in the life of what it looks like after you've got your test automation in place and it's generating results for you. Because you can really begin by looking at result data. You can start your day, as you can see in the background here, an email notification that's been automatically sent out following a test list that has been run. This could be running over the weekend, or it could be running on a nightly basis or daily basis, and essentially it spits out this email notification to anybody that needs to be notified with attachments of result data. So this allows you to start by looking at what's failing instead of wasting time on trying to figure out what's working, and also provides some very rich failure details data that we're going to be looking at to help the QAs and the BAs and the folks that are in charge of making sure everything's working correctly, to allow them to evaluate if the problem is application related, if it's test problem, what it might be, but then also be able to communicate that to the appropriate people. So this really empowers the QA process. Even a manual, non-technical user can really get a lot of advantages out of Test Studio, but then we also make it approachable for a developer tester as well. We really want to encourage the collaboration between the development and QA to make sure that there's a great feedback loop. And this is where the failure details is very valuable for a tester to be able to send back to the development team if it's an application issue. We'll look through the failure details here in more detail, but basically a lot of rich data that's provided automatically at the point that a test fails that can be easily communicated back into the team. With our bug tracking integration, you can easily submit the bug directly into the bug tracking system, and with all of the attachments and so forth that go with that. We also, of course, provide integration for continuous integration options or build server automation, so there's lots of ways in which you can get the data in the right hands of those folks that need it. Also, of course, if there's a test issue involved, this is a well-supported and known for its support product. It's engineer-level support with a 24-hour guaranteed response time. You can always take a failure details, zip it, attach it to your support ticket, and it helps our support guys help you get the answers you need as well. So either way you go, you've got some great data that's going to allow you to get the assistance you need to make sure your applications are all working correctly, and your websites as well. So Test Studio has a really different approach than a lot of tools out there for the creation and the maintenance of tests. And we call this our 4 solutions to every problem. So during a test creation process, which we'll go through here in a minute, you can first hit record, do what a user does, and essentially capture all of those actions and elements by point and click record. And you can play that back across multiple browsers and get a lot of data back about how well your application's working. Now, if that simple point and click doesn't do the job, we have the ability to build a step with a toolbar that has a very powerful set of tools. In fact, here's an example up on top. We're setting up an image verification that's looking at a pixel level verification to make sure an image is correct, among other types of very advanced functionality that's built in that build a step. Third, if we can't do it through those first two methods, we can utilize XY coordinates or location-based interactions. And that's where a lot of tools live today. If you're looking at testing tools out there, they rely on XPaths or XY coordinates or images or something like that to locate things. Whereas TestStudio takes a much more sophisticated approach. You're going to see more on that in a few moments. But basically what this boils down to is ease of use and a low learning curve. You can basically step in and you have three different solutions here that are codeless before you have to utilize code. That means that we can typically automate between 80 and 90% of web-based applications without having to rely on the development team. That allows the developers to really focus on creating new functionality. So you can use your best assets to make the best out of that application, and of course empower the QAs to be able to be more agile in the process as well. There's a theme of reusability throughout TestStudio. We'll go through this real quickly. First of all, when we capture elements and we're talking about inputs, buttons, anything that you come across as you're creating a test, we'll store that globally across the project. We'll reuse the elements whenever we come across the same one again. This way, when things change, when things break, we can fix it across the entire project instead of having to go from script to script to do that. We've got cross-browser compatibility. This is due to our sophisticated file logic, which you'll see next. We've got deployment environments, so you can reuse these tests across different deployment environments as it moves from staging to production and so forth. We have the ability to use test as step. It's a very popular feature that we've got, where any repetitive process or common function can be called from another test. So you can actually call tests from other tests and reuse those tests, make modular kind of pieces that you can put together in a lot of different combinations. Then of course you could take your functional regression tests that you're creating and run them as performance tests to see where the bottlenecks are in your application, and run them as a load test to see what capacities you can handle. Of course, when you're coming around to registration time, you want to make sure that all of the students who want to get on and get the classes they need can get on and get access, and that the system can handle that type of load. Of course, copy-paste, ease of use throughout TestStudio, just another way in which we help reuse things. And here's more on that sophisticated file logic. So under the hood of TestStudio, this is what we call the Corvette Engine. Basically, TestStudio is looking for the elements by the attributes of the element, by the properties of the element. And here in the background is an example of how we might locate a login button, for example. In this example, it's using the text content, which is the label on the button, and that's how users work. So we can actually do that. Or there may be even stronger methods, like using IDs or an href or other things, and as we see this prioritized list, the weaker and weaker identifiers are closer to the bottom. We'll see this in more detail. It's a bit of a smaller version, but you'll see this in real life in a few moments. On the foreground here is how we can tailor the project settings to fit the application under test. Today you're going to see an Angular application brought to us by Michigan Colleges Online. They've allowed us to use their site as an example for you guys today. And an Angular application may have a very different tuning of the find logic strategy than a typical HTML5 application. So this can be customized and tailored to fit the application under test to make sure that we find the strongest method of locating elements and of course create a backup prioritization as well. So when there is a failure, it can fail with suggestions, as you can see in the background, where there's suggestions listed here of how you might repair or modify this element. We can create very powerful change find expressions, and of course we can fix and maintain these elements without code. And here's a bit more on codeless test maintenance. On the fly, as you're creating your test, you can add verifications from our element highlighter. Lots of great, powerful, quick steps that we've populated in there, and of course the ability to jump in and build a step if you need to through our toolbar. We've got, of course, editing the elements against the live UI, so you get feedback from the application to tell you, yes, this is working, no, it's not. Of course, creating element-to-element drag and drops, where responsive design applications these days are going to be moving our buttons around, and we want them to. We want them to be basically fit the form factor that the user is bringing to the table. So that means we need to make sure we have a testability of those buttons, of those elements when they move, and Test Studio can do that. We can go find element A and drag it to element B no matter where they move around. And of course, when you have a change that applies to many different tests, you can apply it across the whole project instantly with a couple clicks. Now, a lot of testing tools out there struggle with more of the complex widgets. We've recently put out a tutorial. We've got a lot of great videos that have recently been added as well by our product management team. And really, when it comes to dynamic grids and dynamic situations, Test Studio excels. We'll take a look at some of this today and how we can work with a grid that can be sorted, filtered, paged, all those different things, and how we can go find something accurately using location or content or a combination of both of those, and then even data drive that to make a loop out of it. This is all, of course, accomplished by using Test Studio's ultimate license to create and maintain the tests, and then also having our Test Studio runtime licenses to be able to execute tests across different maybe browser versions, maybe operating systems that you need to test against. So you can create a lab environment of virtual machines often that you can execute multiple tests in parallel against and get a multitude of result data as well. So lots of information that you can get and lots of mileage that you can get out of every test that we create. The runtime also gives you the performance monitoring capability that's used for performance testing as well as load testing. And of course, we can work in a continuous integration environment, integrate to source control like Git or TFS, integrate to the bug tracking system, so we can be a part of the process, the development process that you already have underway. And of course, we provide this with our legendary support, 24-hour engineer level guaranteed response time. We got webinars that we host weekly like this one. Tons of resources. Here's a look at the Help tab. If you haven't already looked at the Help tab in Test Studio, it's not just what version am I using, but you have direct access to access our feedback portal, for instance. You can tell us how we should shape the product. You can vote up features to make sure we prioritize them on the roadmap and comment and be a part of that community. Or jump into the forums and provide solutions, or if you need help from support, click the Submit Ticket button. So this gives you a world of access to lots of resources that are always being updated. So next we're going to jump over to Test Studio itself. And here, let's see, that's the other one. I've got a couple projects up. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is just give you some familiarity with what we're seeing here. There's a lot on the screen right now, and this is something that you can configure to your liking. There are lots of tabs that we have for accessing whether it's properties or our step builder that lets you build steps very quickly and easily, or the project tab and the integration point to source control. I have this project integrated to Git source control, so I can commit changes, I can revert to server, and that way all of my team members can access the most up-to-date versions of these tests. We can keep track of the versioning and the chain of custody and conflict resolution as well. So lots of things to see. I'm going to pin back for now my project tab because you can move around and modify these tabs to wherever you'd like. And we'll just give ourselves a little bit more room on the test tab here to see what we've got. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is how we can create a test. So we're going to be utilizing, again, the MichiganCollegesOnline.org site. And the first thing I'm going to do is just hit record and do what a user does, basically. So we'll start recording here in Firefox to begin with. You can record from IE, Firefox, or Chrome. And now my recorder is attached, so we'll just provide that URL here, hit start recording, and I think now we're where we should be. So we have the recorder attached, and now we can basically go through the site as a typical user. We're going to click on this little burger button. You can see it captures that click for me. And we're going to ask the question, are we ready for online courses? So back here you can see as it's capturing my actions, we're just going to go through a quick self-assessment. This opens up a pop-up window. You'll see Test Studio will connect and continue recording in the pop-up window as well. And we have a lot of radio buttons. So I've read through these questions previously, but don't take my answers as literal. We're just going to go through real quick and just sort of make up a little bit of time by clicking through some of these questions for this particular self-assessment here. There we go. And at the end of that whole process, I can see that there's a total up here. Lets me know distance learning is a good possibility for me. And of course, all those questions along the way were pertinent to can you work on your own and things like that. But the point of this is that we've captured all those steps. We'll go take a look at that in a minute. But before we go on to the test, I want to show you that Test Studio gives us the ability here to also interpret layering on the page with the element highlighter. I can toggle this on and quickly add in verifications and modify, JavaScript events as well, mouse actions, scroll actions. There's lots of things just packed into the quick steps here. Also, just within the quick steps, we can verify something shows up or is enabled. We can wait for something to show up if we need the appropriate timing adjustment. We can also extract values from the actual live UI itself. And then, of course, if we need additional, more advanced kind of capabilities, we can jump down to build step, which will take us into our toolbar, so we can do a little bit more advanced stuff as well. So I'm going to just utilize this as a verification at the end of my test to make sure that that actually shows up. And let's see if we can actually verify the content itself. There we go. There's my score. So we'll just do a quick step verification to verify that that says 45, and that should be all we need. So we'll go ahead and close the browser. This ends the recording. Back here on my test, you can see all of the steps that we've captured, and of course all of the elements that are captured along the way too. We can filter this down to just this test, a lot of radial buttons that we captured there for us. But we're going to just quickly run this back, and I recorded that. I think I ended up recording that on IE, so we'll go ahead and execute on Firefox. As you can see here now, we have the 5 options for execution, and we'll hit run, and we'll watch that run right back for us. So this is that first solution. Hit record, do what a user does. As you can see, it's going to jump right back in to that self-assessment, toggle all of those checkboxes, and then return our result for us. And we had 34 out of 34. Very quickly, we'll look at the view log here. This shows us that it was run against Firefox 4802. All the test steps that passed here. Of course, that took about 10.5 seconds to complete. And we can move on to the next test. But before we do that, I'm going to slow this down using Annotations. I'm going to rerun this test for you. We'll also hit another browser. We'll run this one in Safari for a good example. And the Annotations are going to slow down the test execution, adding 400 milliseconds between each test step, and also highlighting all the steps along the way. So we'll get more of a play-by-play here. So now you can see it highlight as we go. Now it's connecting to the pop-up, and it should complete the actual assessment and highlight each of those elements as well. So it can be that easy. It's very quick to get in and create something that's repetitive, that can be used across multiple browsers, that's consistent and reliable like this. And ultimately, at the end of this, we should have the verification verify that it's the correct amount that we expect it to be. So as this wraps up, we're going to jump into another test where we've got a failure to troubleshoot. So I'll show you what that process looks like and what that failure details looks like as well. I believe we've got one more page of this assessment. This is a great way to debug and to really just take a closer look at what the test is doing when you've got problems or when you're trying to fix something that's broken. I always love to turn on annotations and run through the test to see what it can show me. So here's our final verification, and it's closing out the window, closing out the browser, returning our results. This, by the way, is what we call quick execution. So again, we had a 34 out of 34 passed, but this quick execution just provides a temporary result. It is actionable data, so if we have a failure, we can act on it. But if we clear the results or re-execute, this result is gone. This is done on purpose so that you can separate the tests that are under construction from the tests that are ready for prime time. So this way I can run this. It can fail multiple times, but it's not going to impact my reports or my results because it's considered under construction. Once I put it in a test list, we'll run it and we'll get real results, real report data from that point. All right, so jumping over to my next one here. We're going to go through the MCO registration test. And there's a couple things I'm going to point out in this test, but for now what I'll do is just run it without annotations so we can get a quick result that we can view and start to work with. So we'll hit Edge this time for an execution. So this test is going through some drop-downs and doing a course search, and should be selecting a course for us for registration purposes as well. I believe it's going to be an accounting course. Now Test Studio utilizes timeouts, and this is a test that we had set up to fail. It passed 14 out of 15 here, but I want to talk more about the timeouts because it took a little bit longer to run that test since at the end it was getting to a point where it actually failed. That's because it utilized more time. It was able to use up to 15 seconds to make sure it can find the appropriate element, or up to, in my case, 70 seconds to make sure the web page is ready at the beginning of that test. So we've built in these timeouts throughout at a step level, at a test level, at a test list level, so that you can get your test running as quickly as possible, but allow for ample amount of time when needed. When things are loading more slowly or a grid has to populate, we can make sure that the timing is adjusted accordingly. So we had a failure here. I want to double click on this red X. This will give me the full failure details, which includes the complete test log, just like what we saw before from the log link. This has the complete test log contained within the failure details as well. And it shows me what's passed and actually ultimately what failed down here. It shows me a little bit about that failure as well. You can see there was a NG app identifier that was being used. We have an Angular application under test. And of course it took 21 seconds that time to run this particular test. We've also captured the exception log and of course images. And the images show us a very different state between the expected state and the failed state. So it looks like this has the expectation that it's expanded, it's open. During the failed state, it looks like it was not at that particular point. So we have a little bit of a mismatch. But we've got a great way to see what's expected, what happened at the point of failure. Also, we've captured the page DOM at the point of failure too. So you can see what was going on behind the scenes when that failure occurred as well. And on the Resolve Failure tab, we'll see that there was some suggestions provided. So back to the failure tab really quickly, I just want to show you in the center section here, it was basically saying it couldn't find the element that was looking for this expander on the grid. It was utilizing this logic, this combination of things to find that particular element, and it failed. But a backup search method kicked in and was able to locate something. In this case, it was XPath. Now, I'm not going to use XPath as the solution, but oftentimes XPath is a great way to find additional suggestions. So we'll look at what XPath brought us back, and that is where you'll find on the Resolve Failure tab the list of suggestions. So this is what XPath found at the point of failure. This is the logic that was trying to be used to locate the expander in the first place. So it's looking at an ID to a row. This is a sort of a body level or grid level to a row level within the grid, and then ultimately a class, which in this case was looking at a down arrow, and at the point of failure it captured the class, which was actually an angled up arrow. Now I'm recalling that during the creation of this test I actually copied and pasted a test step. Let me get to the right screen there. I copied and pasted a test step for that particular step, and instead of it being up and down, or instead of it being down at this point, is actually up. So I should be able to just modify my class, switching out the correct one for the wrong one here, and hit validate, and I'm getting a great, we're able to find the element using those settings, and I essentially can fix that for the entire project. Also, I can connect up to the live environment to make sure that I've got the latest data and information from the suggestions here, and we'll hit OK. You can see this is being used by more than one step in this test, and we're just going to modify it for step 15. But again, if it's in more than one test, multiple steps, you'll be able to update that element if it's used in other places all across the project in one foul swoop. So now we'll re-execute this test. In fact, this time I'm just going to use an option we call run to here. This is a great way to jump back into troubleshoot a test if I need to re-record something. And of course, when you're in a live recorder, you can also run from here or run selected steps as well. So that way you don't have to jump in and out of the recording process. You can stay there and continue to work on it. So this time we'll do run to here with Internet Explorer as the recording tool browser. And we'll see if we solved our problem. Now it looks like I may not have had the right timing in there because it jumped right back out and said that it failed to find that view link. So I'm actually just going to try to rerun from here now that I'm in a live recorder. I think I had just a bit of too much of a timing delay. That can also be adjusted by adding more time at that test level. I'm sorry, at the test step level. Great. And now you can see back here on the test itself, it went through and verified, first of all, that the view link was there. It clicked on the view link. It did a search for classes. It verified that it could find the Astronomy 104 class, that it contains the this text within that is $380. And of course, if we slow that down with the annotations, you see a little bit more of that detail there. But basically, we can see also that it selected it, and that time it actually closed it. So this is where it did all of the verifications, the $380, the credit hours, even the course equivalency search as well, and toggled it to be selected. So this leaves us now at the end of that particular test step, still in a live record mode, and that time it did pass with the correct expander that was clicked there. So I want to show you a few more things before we leave this test. I'm going to turn on my element highlighter again. You can see that it really helps us find all the elements that make up the page. This time I'm going to use this image, and we'll just do a quick build step. So sometimes if it's not a basic is it visible or not visible type of verification, if you want a little bit more cosmetic types of verifications, we'll use the toolbar, and that basically brings me to this point. It's highlighting for me the element on the screen that's been selected from me just hover overing that and go to build a step. So it takes you to the right spot in the document object model here on the toolbar. And over here on the right, we have the ability to add some actions or verifications against that particular element. As you can see, a lot of these mouse actions here we naturally record, but there's some more advanced ones in here too, like right-click or double-click or hover over or drag and drop. Lots of advanced capabilities that you can build directly from here. Also on the verification side, we have the basics, again, just like we saw in the quick tasks. But you also have more of the cosmetic ones, things like looking at style, either computed or inline. We could check font, color and background, text display. We can make sure that things are showing up in the right spot on the screen, they're the right color, they're the right font. All of those things that really the human eye verifications that you think of. And also we can make sure, as you're creating these, it will automatically populate the current value that's present on the page. So it makes it very easy for you to just select what you want, click Add Step, it adds that step to the test. On the attribute side here, we can also see there may be a class, there's an ng hide, there's a source as well, so we can even verify that the right image file is being used. Or for an image, we can also jump down to image verification, which is the pixel level comparison. Now this is very specific. is looking to make sure that all of the pixels of this image match from execution, from recording to execution. So it's going to take what we've captured here during the recording process and during execution make sure that it's within the same threshold. So at this point, I have to have 99% of these pixels match for this test step to pass. Now, we want to maybe make that a little bit more generous there, so we'll make it a 10% threshold. That way it'll allow that image to be slightly different. But the nice thing about this is it will go find this image wherever it exists. We still have that sophisticated find logic to go locate the image and then just focus on this instead of the entire screen. Even when we want to verify just a part of the image, let's say maybe this logo portion of it on the right, you'll see it start to use XY coordinates, but these are not based off of the entire page. They're based off first finding that image on the page and then taking a portion of that into consideration for this test. So even when we use XY coordinates, it's very sophisticated. We'll add that step as well, and we'll go ahead and close our browser down, take a look back at the test. Sorry, there's a mobile project we're going to be looking at in a few moments. We'll take a look back at the test, and you can see where our verification is going to verify the color. We've got the source, and also our verification for the percent tolerance here. Now, since these are more of our cosmetic types of verifications, I like to utilize our continue on failure option. To make sure that our test can continue, it will capture our data. It may not be a functional verification. These up here may be more important to making sure things are functioning correctly. So I do want it to fail if this fail the test out if this particular step fails. These may be a little bit more cosmetic. I still want to capture information if there's a failure, but I don't necessarily want my test to end. So that way you can really make sure to get all of the data that you need, whether it's a cosmetic issue or whether it's a true functional issue within the application. Also on our step builder, we can easily jump in and create test to steps or incorporate test to steps. Oftentimes we might build a test that has a login process and then a couple other processes that we combine together. So you can just grab an existing test, drop it in here. It looks like I just dropped that at the bottom, but you can always edit your test very easily too. Maybe I need to log in before I go through that process, so I can put that up at the top of the test. Super easy to work with. Lots of things that are packed in here, and of course at any point you can always right-click and edit something in code. This will open up the IDE within Test Studio and generate the code behind file. And in fact, we can make it a little bit more roomy for us to be able to work. And we can drop this down side by side to see our mostly codeless test on the left, and then that coded step converted to code here on the right that we can continue to grow and expand if we need to. You can see there's a great IntelliSense built into. There's a lot of great tooling built into the actual IDE here. And of course, we also provide this through Visual Studio directly. So this so far has been in our standalone environment, but we also provide a Visual Studio plugin when necessary. But keep in mind, this conversion to code is typically not necessary for the general test and the general application under test. So we can easily convert that back if we'd like to and get back to sort of the codeless test. Now we're going to transition very quickly back to the project level, because I want to show you a few more things before we jump over to some mobile testing as well. Test Studio provides a lot of different project types, and just to show you what you see at the start, you'll have a choice between our web and desktop project type that has our coverage for WPF, Silverlight, and web applications, our mobile type of project that covers your iOS and Android and mobile web applications, and also our new API. This is actually our beta version of API projects that currently cover REST and web API testing as well. So today you're seeing so far web-based testing with web and desktop. Inside of web and desktop, you also get the ability to utilize performance and load testing. Now, performance is basically just a matter of selecting a functional test and then clicking on the Performance tab. Load testing is a different type of test, but still utilizes the same tests that you've created for your functional tests. So I'm going to just pin some tabs back here to give us a little bit more room to see. Because when we design our load test, we can capture our traffic from our existing web tests. So all of those tests that we just made related to MCO, for instance, a lot of great search and filter capabilities, as you can see here too. Now I can go grab one of those, capture the traffic from that test, and that results in us getting the actual traffic from that looks something like this. It captures all of the test steps, or all of the gets and posts, also some think time. This is time spent on the page, and this can be customized in duration and deviation, so you can add more randomization to your load test. So once you've gone through and created your functional tests that prove whether or not your application is functioning correctly and that students can register for courses and so forth, then you can take that, capture the traffic from that functional test, customize it, even data drive it. As you can see on the post operation, this has been linked up to a database that has a number of different usernames and passwords, so that each virtual user that the load test generates will be logging in with different credentials. So we've got our test capture there. We'll oftentimes capture from multiple scenarios because we're usually going to see a combination of things happening on our application at the same time. People registering, some people logging in, some people browsing. So there's a combination of things there. And you can modify that workload as well to fit the according to what the real world is as well. We also support the use of identities for Windows authentication applications. Also, of course, you can capture not just from your existing web test, but from a live session from any of the browsers here, also from APIs traffic, and also from mobile device traffic. So that way you can bring together all of the endpoints into that test and be able to accommodate a combination of not just scenarios, but simulating what users are accessing, how the users are accessing it as well. So you can capture that. Also, one other capture process you can utilize is importing your user scenarios from Fiddler files, those .saz files. So if you're familiar with Fiddler, another product within the Progress stack, you can use Fiddler. It's a free product. Go capture traffic. Just like we do capture traffic here, it's a little bit more sophisticated. It's a very popular developer tool, and you can import those as another way to bring your scenarios into your load test. In addition to the scenarios and the workload, we have our performance monitoring. This taps into Test Studio's profiler that allows us access into the Windows performance counters so that we can see how well things are working. Not just if it's working or not, but how close to the edge of the cliff are we when something's beginning to fail, and what leads up to that. So we can really inspect all of the available performance counters that are available on that machine. These are going to be different depending on what type of machine you're looking at. Mine's got Hyper-V and SQL Express and all sorts of things in here. But generally speaking, we might be looking at processor, physical disk, things like that, memory consumption. And basically you're building out a template of things that can be analyzed during that load test. This, by the way, is the same thing that you do during a performance test. And it may be coming from multiple machines because you want to see what the student or user perspective looks like, and then also what's happening on the actual application server when this is happening, or on the database server. So you may be monitoring multiple machines. You can adjust your strategy and your scenario here to basically fit whatever your scenario might be. You can also, of course, ramp or not ramp. If you're doing a multiple hour soak test to see how performance may degrade over time, you can accomplish that. Or if you wanted to do the typical stress test and just go from 1 to 10,000, you can do that as well. And then, of course, when you go to run, one of the most compelling things about Test Studio's load testing is it's, again, very easy to use. You capture traffic from many different methods, one of those being your existing functional test that you've already got, and then you can set goals. And the goals let you sit back and relax and have Test Studio do the hard work for you. Because a lot of load testing tools, load tests produce a ton of data and a ton of results. And typically you'll have to do a lot of number crunching to see whether or not you've succeeded. Well, Test Studio does that for you. You can use our built-in goals here to see if your average response time across all machines involved is staying sub 3 seconds, if your errors are within a threshold, or if you're getting up to the appropriate responses received per second. Of course, if you're getting to your concurrent usage that you want to, this is actually how many people can we handle simultaneously. And then you can also customize these goals and choose any of the performance counters from those machines that you've got turned on. So if I wanted to look at pooled connections in SQL or transactions per second or something like that, I can actually look at very, very detailed data from any of the machines and build my goals around that to make sure that we're getting what we need. So in order to pass a load test in Test Studio, I have to pass all of my goals. Jumping over to the Analyze screen here, we'll show you some result data. Here's a 4-minute test with 100 users. And it looks like it only passed 2 out of 6 goals. If we look at the goals here, we had a non-response. Actually, that looks like a bad go. Let me get back to one that's actually got some data in it. So here's one with average response time. We've got created virtual users or current virtual users, errors per second. We can also scroll down and see all of those performance counters are here as well. So we can look at processor interrupt time or privilege time or something like that and overlay those on the graphing here. You can even combine result data from multiple tests to compare those to each other, see if you get big spikes occurring. Here you can see the current virtual user level. It got up to 100 at the max. The median was 100 as well. Average was 89. Minimum was 8, and that was at a 1 scale, so it'll automatically scale this for you as well. So lots of great data that you can get out of your failed tests. Of course, you also get page-specific metrics. If there are errors that are occurring, you'll get the error codes and the count and the timing related to that as well. So lots of great data that you can gather from your existing functional test now running as a load test. And then last but not least, we're going to jump over to my other project here. I'll leave this one up, but we'll get out of the way. Because here we have a Test Studio mobile project. Now you have the ability to create your iOS and your Android tests, your mobile web tests through record and playback, and still utilizing much of the same approach where we automatically capture elements during recording. You hit record and do what a user does, and we'll capture those elements as you can see here. And if we jump in and edit one of these, you can see that we're using the same type of process to locate elements. We don't go to where they are on the screen, we go to where the element is. It's not a location-based logic like a lot of tools use. It's more sophisticated than that. So I can go find that by ID or even customize the properties for it to look for that element. And of course use some of those other properties like index or class if need be too. So very much the same approach to element identification. This is very, very powerful because you can record a test in portrait, run it in landscape. The same test can work even across multiple devices. So if I record it on an iPod, I can run it on an iPad. It doesn't matter because we're looking for the element where the element exists. The form factor can be different. Now when we need to, we can utilize gestures. And gestures are, even with Test Studio, you don't have to, you could do a lot with gestures. It's our second choice. You know, it's not our first choice to how we would automate because we want to go find the element where the element exists, but there are times where gestures are the only method. And we have very sophisticated ones at that. Let me go ahead and bring up for you a actual device itself, and we'll run a couple tests. So Test Studio Mobile is a little bit of a younger part of our application, but it's got a great future in front of it. There's a giant roadmap to really provide the same ease of use that you've already come to know from our web and desktop solution. So it follows a lot of the same principles. Now, as I'm bringing up my device here, should be seeing that on screen here in a moment. We'll also jump over and see there's also, of course, lots of tabs, properties, step builder, things to work with. You can always push these out of the way and dock them and undock them, and also turn off ones that you don't necessarily want or need. I should also show you the Help tab here. Gives you access directly to submit tickets or forms and videos, lots of things at your fingertips. And as we're jumping into this, I also want to point out something that's new and really cool, the ability to actually go get an application from your device itself, instrument it so that it becomes testable, and then deploy it to either the same device or even another device. So Test Studio has created now a wizard to where you don't have to go to the development team at all. You can just capture, really set your application up for test with a couple button clicks. And our screen sharing app is having a rough time here, so let me see if I can bring that over. This is going to be a mirror of a real device once it comes awake. Here we go. Now while we're waiting for that to connect, I'm going to jump back over here because we do see that it's a connected device. It's listed as a connected device here. So we could take our test and go execute it across that particular device, and it will run actually directly on the device itself. Now we use emulators or simulators as well, so you're not just stuck with real devices. And of course we have a partnership with a device cloud host called TestDroid that you can utilize your Test Studio tests across hundreds of different devices simultaneously as well. And I apologize, it looks like my screen mirroring app is having a little bit of a tough time being shared out. I'll try to connect to that one more time, because it's always a lot better when you can actually see the device itself instead of a black screen. Now this sharing app, or this mirroring app I'm using, has nothing to do with Test Studio. It's just for my ability to be able to share it with you through the power of the webinar. So wait to see if it's going to cooperate this time. Okay, kick the tire a little bit. Now while that's still getting tuned up there, you'll see that it executed all of my actions here. There's some taps, there's some verifications as well. We can verify property values along the way, so it's very easy. You still have the element highlighter too that happens for you, and it can basically highlight while you're looking at the real device, which I'm hoping to get a chance to show you. This particular test actually failed. There's a hardware key press down here. It was the back button, it looks like. And we can look at the error details here too. It's more than likely I had actually a couple duplicate test steps there, so that's probably what caused that. Okay, we're going to give our screen stream one more chance here to mirror for us. And I think it might have just gotten itself together here. So there we go, perfect. Awesome. So this is a Nexus 9, and it's a little tablet basically. I'm just going to hit execute here, flip back over so you can see it will launch the actual application on the device itself, fill out some data for us, go through a sign-in process. Looks like it's making a shopping list here, and then ultimately return the results for us. By the way, that sample app I'm working with is also a NativeScript app. NativeScript is a framework that we provide to allow you to build native applications for both iOS and Android. And that's available through our Telerik platform. But again, we have the same method to the madness here, the ability to click record, have an instrumented application and a device connected to Test Studio, and basically from there be able to create a test. So here's our actual mobile testing agent that's got our current connection. If we want to, we can jump in, tell it what application we want to test against. We'll hit start. That will kick off the recorder on the actual device. It's launched the application for us. Let's see, I've got the wrong one up here. Let me go ahead and pull up the right test for that application. And we can either run this test now that we're in a live record mode. We also have run to here, run selected steps, run from here. So those have carried over from what we already do well in Test Studio Web. And I want to show you too, we're going to do just a quick run from here at the end of this test to show you what it looks like when you do have gestures. As you can see, the blue dots show the actual gestures, whether it's 5 fingers zooming in and out, or whether it's a swipe or a pinch or what have you. So when we do use gestures, it's still a very sophisticated type of gesture versus when we can go find a particular element, locate that specific element like you can see here, and utilizing the find logic that's strongest essentially. So you've got a lot of options at your fingertips. no pun intended. But again, I'll show you how we can just run those gestures out and, of course, take screenshots along the way. Oops, there it goes. And of course, the recording capability, if I wanted to continue to add on to this test, I'm still in a live record mode, so I can just go back to my device here and just start clicking away. And even jump into the DOM Explorer tab, so you can see it added some new steps down here. And I can even jump into the DOM Explorer tab, and we'll try to share the screen here for you. And on the DOM Explorer tab, I can go drill down into the layer of the application that I might want to add a verification on. You'll see the red highlighter as it closes in for us on the area that I'm looking at. So here's, for example, our button. Here's our checkbox. And if we combine this with our Properties tab, we can see the actual live properties of this checkbox and even add verifications against any of these properties as well. So here's our mTransform that shows checkbox, our positioning, our true or false, whether it's actually checked or not. So we can actually do verifications on all of those things just by looking at what it is that we might want to verify, finding the appropriate property. Here's mChecked, for example. I'll flip over to the step builder. From here, I can add common things like a screenshot. So let's make sure that from a screenshot standpoint, it is actually showing as checked. And from a verification standpoint, we'll verify this property value. We'll drill down into the mChecked option. It shows true. We'll click OK, and that's how we can easily and quickly add a verification against a mobile application. So that's going to be about it for today. I know we've covered a lot of ground here. Sorry for a little bit of the process of trying to get devices showing, but there's lots to talk about. I know we've got a couple questions in the chat log and the questions panel already, so we'll take a quick look at those here for another moment, but I want to thank everybody for attending and have a great day. If we don't get to your questions, we'll definitely follow up via email, and feel free if there's any additional questions to pop those in at this point. If you've seen enough, thanks a lot for your time and attention, and have a great day.